Picture this. You're standing at a crossroads you didn't even know was coming. One moment you're living your life, checking off the daily tasks, moving through your routines, and then suddenly everything shifts. The children you devoted decades to are packing their bags. The career that defined you is winding down. The body you've inhabited your entire life is changing in ways you weren't prepared for. The relationship you built your world around is transforming or ending. You look around and wonder, is this it? Is this how it all ends? But here's what nobody tells you. These aren't endings at all. They're passages, doorways, transformations that every woman will walk through, yet most of us enter them blind, unprepared, and utterly alone. We treat these universal transitions like personal failures, like secrets to be hidden, like battles to be fought in isolation. What if I told you there are 5 major endgames that virtually every woman will face in her lifetime? 5 pivotal transitions that will redefine who you are, what you value, and how you move through the world. And what if understanding these endgames in advance could transform you from a passive participant in your own life into the conscious author of your own story? Before we dive deep into these 5 transformative passages, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from today? Drop your city in the comments below. Because here's the truth. While these endgames are universal, how we experience them varies dramatically based on where we are, who we are, and what resources we have access to. So tell me, where in the world are you navigating your journey? Universal life transitions versus individual choice. The concept of endgames in women's lives presents a fascinating paradox that sits at the intersection of biological reality, social construction, and personal agency. When we speak of universal life transitions, we acknowledge that certain experiences are shared across the female experience regardless of geography, culture, or individual circumstances. These are the moments that arrive uninvited, the transitions that knock on every woman's door eventually. Yet within this universality lies an infinite spectrum of individual responses, choices, and outcomes that make each woman's journey distinctly her own. The first layer of understanding these endgames requires us to recognize the biological and temporal realities that shape women's lives. There are physiological milestones that occur within relatively predictable timeframes. The fertility window opens and eventually closes. The body undergoes transformations through puberty, potential pregnancy, perimenopause, and menopause. These are not social constructs, but biological facts that create natural inflection points in a woman's life trajectory. However, the meaning assigned to these biological events and the choices made in response to them vary dramatically from one individual to another. Career culmination represents another universal transition point, though its manifestation differs wildly. Whether a woman has spent decades climbing corporate ladders, building her own business, working multiple jobs to support her family, or dedicating herself to unpaid domestic labor, there comes a moment when she must confront what the endpoint of her professional identity looks like. For some, this means retirement planning and legacy building. For others, it means finally pursuing the career they always wanted after years of sacrifice. Still others face this transition through forced circumstances like ageism in the workplace, health limitations, or caregiving responsibilities that pull them away from paid work. Relationship evolution and resolution constitute yet another unavoidable endgame. Women navigate the shifting terrain of romantic partnerships, whether through long-term marriage, divorce, widowhood, chosen singleness, or serial monogamy. There comes a point where women must reconcile their earlier romantic ideals with the reality of what partnership has or has not provided. This reckoning may happen at midlife, in later years, or multiple times throughout life. The choices made at these junctures reflect deeply personal values about companionship, independence, sexuality, and what constitutes a life well lived. The family legacy decision represents perhaps the most emotionally charged endgame. Whether a woman has children or remains child-free, whether by choice or circumstance, there arrives a moment of accounting. Mothers face the empty nest and the transformation from active parenting to adult relationships with their children. They grapple with questions of whether they parented well enough, whether they sacrificed too much or too little, and how to define themselves when the role that consumed decades begins to recede. Child-free women face their own reckoning with societal expectations and must make peace with their choice or circumstance while often defending it to others well into their later years. Reframing. Endings as transformations. The language we use to describe life transitions carries enormous power in shaping how we experience them. When we label certain phases as endgames, we risk invoking finality, loss, and diminishment. Yet the lived reality of women moving through these transitions reveals something far more dynamic and generative. What appears from the outside as an ending is often experienced from the inside as a metamorphosis, a shedding of one skin to reveal another that has been forming beneath the surface all along. This reframing is not merely semantic optimism, but reflects the actual psychological and practical reality of how women navigate major life transitions. Consider the transition into retirement, which society has long framed as the end of productive life, the withdrawal from relevance, the beginning of a long denouement. For many women, however, retirement represents the first period of life where time truly belongs to them. After decades of meeting others' needs, fulfilling workplace obligations, and operating within rigid schedules, retirement can become a portal into long-deferred dreams. Women return to abandoned creative pursuits, launch second or third careers in entirely new fields, dedicate themselves to causes they care about deeply, or simply learn the revolutionary act of living according to their own rhythms. The executive becomes the painter, the teacher becomes the world traveler, the nurse becomes the novelist. These are not endings but epic plot twists in an ongoing narrative. The empty nest syndrome, long pathologized as a crisis of purpose for mothers, reveals itself upon closer examination as a profoundly ambivalent transition that many women navigate with unexpected relief and excitement. Yes, there is grief in the departure of children who have been the center of gravitational pull for 2 decades or more. The house feels emptier, the role feels diminished. The identity as mom must expand to encompass something beyond daily caregiving. But simultaneously, women describe a return to themselves that feels like reuniting with an old friend. The mental load lightens. The calendar opens up. The relationship with a partner can be rediscovered or reimagined. Energy and resources previously channeled toward children can be redirected toward personal growth, relationship deepening, or community contribution. This is not loss replacing purpose, but purpose transforming into new expressions. Even menopause, perhaps the most maligned and dreaded of female transitions, can be reframed from decline into liberation. Western culture has long presented menopause as the end of femininity, youth, and relevance. The symptoms are medicalized, the process pathologized, and women are taught to fear this natural transition. Yet many cultures view menopause as the beginning of a woman's power years, when she is freed from fertility concerns and enters a phase of wisdom and authority. Contemporary women increasingly reject the deficit model of menopause and instead embrace it as a recalibration. The end of menstruation is not the end of sexuality, vitality, or feminine power, but rather a shift in how that power is expressed and experienced. Hot flashes become power surges. The end of reproductive years becomes the beginning of the most creatively productive period of life for many women. Aging itself, rather than being merely a march toward irrelevance and invisibility, can be reframed as an accumulation of wisdom, perspective, and hard-won self-knowledge. Each decade strips away more of the performative aspects of femininity that younger women feel compelled to maintain. The pressure to be pleasing diminishes. The tolerance for nonsense evaporates. The clarity about what matters sharpens. Intersectionality matters. The notion that all women face the same 5 endgames in the same ways is a dangerous oversimplification that erases the profound differences in how women experience life transitions based on their social location, economic circumstances, racial identity, cultural background, and historical moment. Intersectionality, a framework developed by legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw, reminds us that women do not experience gender in isolation, but always in combination with other aspects of their identity that either privilege or marginalize them. When we examine the endgames women face, we must acknowledge that a wealthy white woman in Manhattan navigates retirement completely differently than an immigrant woman working multiple low-wage jobs without benefits, and both of their experiences differ entirely from an indigenous woman on a reservation dealing with systemic healthcare inequities. The career culmination endgame provides a stark illustration of these disparities. Professional women with advanced degrees, retirement accounts, and decades in salaried positions can choose when and how to retire, often transitioning into consulting, board positions, or passion projects that maintain their income and status. Meanwhile, women who have worked their entire lives in service industries, agricultural labor, or domestic work may never have the luxury of retirement at all. They work until their bodies give out, often without pensions or adequate Social Security benefits. For these women, the endgame is not about self-actualization, but survival. Black women and Latinas face additional layers of workplace discrimination that affect their earning potential throughout their careers, leaving them with significantly less wealth accumulation by the time retirement age arrives. The gender wealth gap is actually a gendered and racialized wealth chasm. Family legacy decisions also play out along deeply intersectional lines. The choice to remain child-free, which might be celebrated as empowered decision-making for an educated professional woman, may be viewed entirely differently within cultural contexts where family and lineage carry different meanings and obligations. For some immigrant women, having children connects them to cultural continuity and community belonging in ways that transcend individual preference. For Black women in America, motherhood carries the weight of historical trauma related to slavery, forced separation, and ongoing threats to their children's safety and well-being. The empty nest transition looks completely different when your adult children cannot afford to leave home due to economic precarity, which disproportionately affects families of color. Multi-generational living, common in many cultures and increasingly necessary due to economic factors, transforms the entire concept of the empty nest from a universal experience into a culturally specific phenomenon. Aging and health transitions are perhaps where intersectionality creates the most dramatic divergences in women's experiences. Life expectancy varies significantly by race and socioeconomic status. Black women die younger than white women on average and face higher rates of maternal mortality, chronic diseases, and disabilities. Access to quality healthcare, preventive medicine, and treatments for menopausal symptoms differs enormously based on insurance status, geographic location, and whether healthcare providers take women's pain seriously, which research shows they often do not, especially for women of color. A woman with comprehensive health insurance and access to hormone replacement therapy, nutritionists, and personal trainers will navigate menopause differently than a woman working without benefits who cannot afford to miss work when symptoms are debilitating. Cultural attitudes toward aging also vary tremendously. While Western culture tends toward youth worship and renders older women invisible, other cultures venerate elder women as wisdom keepers and community leaders. Asian cultures often emphasize filial piety and intergenerational responsibility in ways that completely reshape what the later life endgame looks like. Societal pressure versus personal authenticity. Every endgame that women face is shadowed by a chorus of external voices telling them how they should navigate these transitions, what choices are acceptable, what timelines are appropriate, and what outcomes will render them successful or failed as women. These societal pressures operate like invisible architecture, shaping the landscape of possibility before women even begin to consider what they authentically want. The tension between meeting external expectations and honoring internal truth creates a psychological battleground where women must constantly negotiate between belonging and authenticity, between approval and self-determination. This negotiation intensifies at each major life transition because these moments make visible the choices women have made and subject those choices to public scrutiny and judgment. The pressure surrounding motherhood provides perhaps the most pervasive example of this tension. From the moment a woman reaches reproductive age, society begins asking when she will have children, how many she will have, and eventually why she has stopped having them. Women who choose to remain child-free face relentless questioning about their decision. accusations of selfishness, predictions that they will regret their choice, and assumptions that something must be wrong with them physically or psychologically. The message is clear. Real womanhood requires motherhood. Yet women who do become mothers face an equally impossible set of expectations. They should have children, but not too many. They should work, but not so much that they neglect their children. They should be fulfilled by motherhood, but not completely consumed by it. They should maintain their pre-baby body, their career trajectory, their relationship vitality, and their individual identity while also being completely devoted to their children's development. The gap between these contradictory expectations and the reality of exhaustion, financial strain, relationship stress, and identity crisis that many mothers experience creates profound cognitive dissonance. Career decisions are similarly laden with external judgment. Women face societal messaging that tells them to lean in, climb the ladder, and prove themselves in male-dominated workplaces, while simultaneously being told that their primary value lies in their relationships and caregiving. Professional ambition in women is often pathologized as unfeminine aggression or cold careerism, particularly when it requires trade-offs in family availability. Women who prioritize career over family face accusations of being unnatural or damaged. Women who step back from careers to focus on family are dismissed as wasting their potential or setting back feminism. Women who attempt to balance both are told they are trying to have it all, as if wanting both meaningful work and meaningful relationships is an act of hubris rather than a basic human desire. As women approach the career culmination endgame, these pressures manifest in expectations about graceful exits, not being too ambitious in later years, and making room for younger workers. Expectations that are rarely applied with equal force to men. Aging presents another minefield of societal expectation versus authentic experience. Women receive constant messaging that aging is something to fight, prevent, and disguise at all costs. The beauty industry generates billions by selling women products and procedures to maintain the appearance of youth. Women are expected to age gracefully, which actually means aging invisibly, maintaining youthful appearance without appearing to try too hard or seeming vain about it. Gray hair on women is seen as letting yourself go, while gray hair on men is distinguished. Wrinkles on women signal decline, while on men they suggest wisdom and experience. The pressure to remain sexually attractive while simultaneously being desexualized as you age creates an impossible paradox. Women who embrace aging naturally are often praised in theory, but face real-world consequences in terms of workplace discrimination, romantic marketplace devaluation, and social invisibility. Empowerment through awareness. The fundamental premise underlying this exploration of endgames is that consciousness transforms experience. When women understand that certain transitions are not personal failures, but universal passages, when they can anticipate the psychological and practical challenges these transitions present, and when they can see the full range of choices available to them, rather than the narrow script society has written, they move from passive recipients of life circumstances to active architects of their own destinies. This shift from reactive to proactive engagement with life transitions represents perhaps the most significant difference between women who feel victimized by aging and change versus those who feel empowered by it. Awareness does not eliminate the difficulties inherent in these passages, but it fundamentally alters the relationship a woman has with her own unfolding story. Consider how lack of awareness shapes women's experience of perimenopause and menopause. Despite being a universal biological transition that every woman who lives long enough will experience, menopause remains shrouded in silence and misinformation. Many women enter perimenopause without recognizing the symptoms, attributing mood changes to personal failings, insomnia to stress, and cognitive changes to early dementia. They suffer in isolation, believing their experience is uniquely terrible, that something is fundamentally wrong with them. When women finally receive accurate information about what is happening in their bodies, there is often profound relief mixed with anger that no one prepared them for this transition. Armed with knowledge, women can seek appropriate medical care, make lifestyle adjustments, connect with other women navigating the same passage, and reframe their experience from personal pathology to natural transition. They can distinguish between symptoms that require medical intervention and those that simply require patience and self-compassion. They can plan for this transition rather than being ambushed by it. The same principle applies to career transitions. Women who understand that workplace ageism exists, that their value may be questioned as they age regardless of their competence, and that reinvention may be necessary, can begin preparing for these realities years in advance. They can build financial cushions, develop portable skills, cultivate professional networks that extend beyond a single employer, and invest in their own ongoing education and adaptability. They can recognize when they are being pushed out versus when they are ready to leave on their own terms. This awareness allows them to make strategic choices about when to fight, when to pivot, and when to exit entirely. Without this awareness, women often internalize workplace discrimination as personal inadequacy, staying too long in situations that damage their well-being, or leaving precipitously without adequate preparation. Relationship endgames benefit enormously from proactive awareness as well. Women who understand that relationships evolve through predictable stages, that the passionate intensity of early romance gives way to companionate love or requires intentional rekindling, that empty nest transitions stress marriages, and that needs and desires change over decades, can approach relationship challenges as normal rather than catastrophic. They can invest in relationship maintenance before a crisis hits. They can have honest conversations about changing needs. They can recognize when a relationship has run its natural course versus when it simply needs attention and care. They can prepare emotionally and practically for the possibility of widowhood or divorce, rather than being completely undone by these transitions. Women who have reflected on what they actually want from partnership, independent of social expectations, can make choices aligned with their authentic needs, rather than performing relationship scripts written by others. The awareness that comes from understanding these endgames also allows women to find community and solidarity, rather than suffering in isolation. When women recognize that their struggles are not individual pathologies but shared experiences, they can seek out and offer support. So there they are, the 5 endgames that every woman faces: the biological transition of aging and menopause, the career culmination and reinvention, the relationship evolution and resolution, the family legacy reckoning, and the confrontation with mortality and meaning. 5 passages that sound heavy, that sound like losses, that sound like the slow dimming of light. But if you've stayed with me this far, you know that's not the real story at all. The real story is that these endgames are not endpoints but transformation points. They are not diminishments but clarifications. They are not about losing who you were, but finally becoming who you've always been beneath all the expectations, the performances, the shoulds and supposed tos that have weighted you down. Here's what I want you to understand. You are not walking this path alone. Every woman who has ever lived, who is living now, and who will live after us faces these same passages. Your grandmother faced them. Your mother is facing them or will face them. Your daughters will face them. This is the shared inheritance of womanhood, the journey we all take, even though we so rarely talk about it openly. But awareness changes everything. Knowing these endgames are coming allows you to prepare, to make conscious choices, to build the support systems and resources you'll need, to reject the narratives that no longer serve you, and to write your own story about what these transitions mean. You get to decide whether your empty nest is a crisis or a liberation. You get to determine whether retirement is decline or renaissance. You get to choose whether aging makes you invisible or finally, blessedly free from the male gaze. You get to define what a life well lived looks like on your own terms. So I'm asking you now, which endgame are you facing right now? Which one are you preparing for? Which one are you helping another woman navigate? Drop it in the comments. Share your story. Because every time a woman speaks her truth about these transitions, she makes it easier for the next woman to do the same. Every time we break the silence, we shatter the shame. Every time we share our wisdom, we light the path for our sisters walking behind us. And if you found value in this exploration, If something here resonated with your experience or opened your eyes to what's coming, do me a favor. Share this video with the women in your life. Your mother, your sister, your daughter, your best friend, your colleagues. Because the greatest gift we can give each other is preparation, community, and the knowledge that we are not alone in these passages. Remember, these endgames are not how it all ends. They're how it all transforms. They're how you shed the skins that no longer fit and step into the fullness of who you were always meant to become. The story doesn't end here. It deepens. It widens. It becomes more authentically yours. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this community of women who refuse to walk these paths in silence and shame. Until next time, keep transforming, keep questioning, keep becoming. The best chapters of your story may still be unwritten. Now tell me, what city are you in, and which endgame are you ready to face with new eyes? Women who have reflected on what they actually want from partnership, independent of social expectations, can make choices aligned with their authentic needs, rather than performing relationship scripts written by others. The awareness that comes from understanding these endgames also allows women to find community and solidarity, rather than suffering in isolation. When women recognize that their struggles are not individual pathologies but shared experiences, they can seek out and offer support.